This is it. Chapter 30. We are actually done with the semester. This is the last week. Can you believe it? Yes, Mr. Petrella is maybe a little bit more excited than he should be, but it's always nice to reach the end of the semester. Congratulations. Now, I got some bad news for you. Chapter 30 is crazy. Why is that, you might ask? Well, let me explain. Back in the 1990s, when Mr. Petrella was a college student like you, Chapter 30 was, the 1990s. That's when he was around. But now, for those of you who missed it, Chapter 30 is still the 1990s, but now you got the 2000s, the 2010s, the 2020s, and the book's gotten no longer. They just keep making this chapter longer and longer and longer. Now, the good news is that you lived through a huge hunk of this era, and it's the textbook company's belief that we really don't have to teach it to you because you already know about it. So hopefully that's the case. You can review and brush up a little bit of the last 20 years. But really, the thing about this era is it is a roller coaster. Starting with Bill Clinton in the 1990s, you see all these political shifts, economic shifts, foreign policy shifts, back and forth as the United States really grapples with what this country will be like moving forward after the Cold War era. Remember, when the Cold War ended at the beginning of the 1990s under George Herbert Walker Bush, the United States really was grappling with this idea of what would be our role in the world. Our initial kind of ideas of being almost like the world's policeman as the lone superpower seemed to backfire with September 11th, 2001 and the terrorist attack, which then led to a war on terror, and has really kind of shifted many Americans into this concept that maybe we need to be more isolationist again, like we saw in the beginning of the 1900s. At the same time, what we've seen with the economy is it's been growing. Great. We're all really excited about that. But there's also this concern about as the economy grows, inequality seems to be growing in the United States. And simultaneously, a lot of this growth is based on debt spending, going back all the way to the Reagan years in the 1980s, not only by the government and the government's debt, but you and your personal debt. And of course, the concern is if you're making a lot of your growth based on debt spending, what happens when all those loans eventually come due? We saw this in 2007 with the recession, which was based on overspending in the housing market due to the low interest rates. And there's concerns about where that might lead in the future. Because of all of this economic instability, what we saw at the end of Chapter 29 was this sense that Republicans turned increasingly towards social conservatism. And there's absolutely no doubt that you've seen that in your lifetime, as we've seen the Republicans almost backlash against the Obama administration with things like the conservative values we saw represented in the Trump administration, and that this social battle, if you will, has really become kind of the forefront of our political system. But before I go, that's my kids in the background. You haven't gotten to hear them all semester, but they're at it today. Anyway, the big thing I want to leave you with is remembering the digital revolution. Much of what I've just said, in case you missed it, mirrors the early 1900s when we really kind of started our class. And that was based on shifts and changes in the American economy, culture, and politics based on the Industrial Revolution. You're going through this digital revolution that started in the 1990s, which has made your world a much smaller place, created greater access to products and goods, just like infrastructure developments always do. It's created a lot more availability of ideas and cultural identity. At the same time, it allows you to pick and choose a lot more, which has created this phenomenon of compartmentalization, where we can have these echo chambers that eliminate unity in our society because we don't have that shared media that we saw in the mid-20th century. These are issues that you're going to be dealing with in your future. Now, what do we got? One last time. Here comes that scroll thing. Yep, we know next week Module 4 is due. In Module 4, when it's completed, you need to have the quiz done for chapters 27 through 30. You need to have discussion group 4 done. You also need to have the supplemental exercise that's really focusing on these issues of September 11th and how they really kind of change America and what you feel is the direction the United States will be going in. Once you've completed all that, all you've got left to do is your final exam. Also, don't forget, if there's stuff you've been missing, particularly when it came to those supplemental things in Module 4, you can get those done for partial credit. If it was a previous module, that's passed. That was like months ago. And you also, if you didn't know it, could make up one quiz you missed, just one. But you got to make sure to let me know. Otherwise, have a great week and have a good end of your semester.